And hello everyone, welcome back to another tutorial. So this will be our last tutorial on Beautiful Soup, but we'll be creating a full-blown application. So the application I showed you in the previous video is basically what we're going to be building here. If you haven't seen that video, I highly recommend you do, because that's what we did here, and we're going to be working off of the knowledge we gained here. So first of all, if you do fall behind, in the description, if this isn't in the description, just leave a comment and remind me that it's not there, because I do schedule my videos and I might forget when I schedule all thousands of them. Anyhow, so here is there's a GitHub repository called YouTube Projects under ReebNetTool, which is me. If you go to Python and into itch scraper, then here you'll find the file of all of the code we're going to write in this tutorial. This tutorial will just explain what's happening in the code, but if you yourself just want the code, or maybe you're having trouble following along, or maybe you have a bug and you don't know how to fix it, you can go get the code here. So yeah, now take note, this is under the MIT license. So you can copy the code and you can do whatever you want with it. No restrictions, just do what you want. So that is basically what the MIT license means. So you can just take this code, modify it, make your own little application from the code we have created here, and publish that if you want to. So yeah, go ahead, have fun. Now, in this tutorial, we'll be basically scraping everything, or scrapping, not scraping, everything we've done here, except for those two imports. So we're just going to do, boom. Actually, we don't have to do everything. We can just probably do that. Cool. And yeah, I'm just going to comment these two out, because for right now we don't need them. So we're only using request and BS4 here. That's all we want. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use a OOP approach to this. You don't need to use OOP, but I do like using OOP here and there. If you're bad with Python OOP and you don't get it that well, I do have a tutorial on Python OOP, so I do recommend you watch it. So yeah, but I'll try and explain everything here as much as possible. So if you're still a little with some topics, don't worry about it. I'll try my best to explain it. Now, I would like us to create a little if name equals main. Basically what this means, if this file is the main file being executed, so if this file is not being executed by another file, then execute what's inside of here. But if this file, if I say python main.py, which is this file right here, this will execute. But if I say python main2.py, which is a different file, and main2.py executes main.py, then this will not run. That's basically in a sense what that says. Now I would like to make a class. You can make this class outside of this full file right here, although I'm going to create it inside of the file because the class is so small. But once the class becomes pretty big, you can move it outside of the file and make it simpler. So what is this is going to be called itch scraper. So class, I'm going to say itch scraper, because we're going to scrape itch with it, and this is the most generic name I could think of. Now with all or most classes in Python, we're going to need a function called init with 2 underscores, and that should be a t. Init should take in self platform equal to all by default, and I'm going to explain this in a second, and in tag, which is none by default. Okay, and this is none. There we go. And for now we can just pass. Okay, so what is going on here? So first we created a class. If you don't know what OOP is, I do recommend you go watch that video, because I'm not going to cover the entire thing of a class, just some basics. Then we have our init function, which basically means once this is called, so once we call this class or create this class, then execute this function. That's what this means. We take in self because that's just what Python needs. Then we have platform is equal to all. So this is the platform we want to get our data from. So if we go here, we go to browse games, then this is the platform, this right here. And in the tag, this is the tag right here. By default, the platform is all, meaning it will take from all of these platforms. And the tag is none by default, meaning there's no specific tag, because the user can enter a tag, but you can specify a tag here if you want. This doesn't even have to be here. You can just put something else here if you wanted to. Cool. Now here we can say self.platform is equal to platform. Self.tag is equal to tag. And this means the self.platform is equal to platform. So this platform is this right here. So if I were to make this SD, this will have to be SD, like that. So those are like that. And the self.platform just means this platform variable right here should be accessible across the entire class. That's what this self.platform means. So this variable should be accessible over the entire class. Then we also want a self.link, and this is in all caps because the link right here, I don't know, I just don't like it really changing, so I like to think of it as a constant. It will in a sense change, but it will more be modified but not changed itself, and you'll see what I mean in a second. So the link will just be this right here, so like that. And here I actually just want to say /free because I want to search only the free games. This is my own personal want. Maybe you can just say pass here. This is my own personal want here, just to search free games. What I'm doing now is, as you can see, there's games. If I say free, then you'll notice it's /free. So this will give us all the free games. This is personal preference. You don't need to have /free there, but I want it there. Next up, we want to add the supported platforms. You don't need to add all of the platforms, but I'm going to add all of them. So you can like add maybe only Windows and Linux and OS X, not Android and iOS or something like that. It doesn't really matter. So I'm going to say self.platforms, and since I'm not going to change it, I'm going to make it all caps. This is a personal preference. That's just how I like to make my constants, because I'm not going to change it, so it has to be all caps. And that's how I feel about it. You don't need to make it all caps, personal preference. Now we need to enter all of these here. Good thing my trusty guide has something I can just copy and paste here, because that's a lot of things to add. So we have OS X for Mac, Linux, Windows, Android, iOS, web, and all. You'll notice all is not here. That is because by default, it will search for all. So if we try and search for a game, so if I by default search for a game, let's say a horror game, then by default, it's going to search in all categories. That's by default. Unless I specify Windows, they will only search for Windows games, and so on and so forth. Now, because we have that, we can go here to the bottom, and we can say scrape is equal to HScraper. Like that. And it's not possible. Of course, you can also say here, platform is equal to, let's say, Linux, for example. Although I'm not going to do that, but it is optional if you want to do that. Now take note, this platform here is the platform we choose. This platform here is the platforms available. So if the platforms we choose is not in the platforms available, we should throw an error. So the user knows, hey, you chose something invalid. So let's code that. Let's code that platforming. So I'm going to say define set platform. Of course, you don't need to use snake case here. You could always use camel case. Although I do prefer snake case. I don't know why. Just personal preference again. We can say self because that's what you need. Make sure the indenting is correct because this has to be inside of this class, so the indenting here needs to be same as with this init here, and it has to be higher than this class. So indenting, just make sure it's correct. And here we can say platform, and then we can also say str. This is self-documentation. It's completely optional, but I like doing it because if I come back in the future and I'm like, wait, how does this function work and what does it do? Self-documentation helps me with that. And here we can say none. Okay, and I'm going to explain what this does in a second. So here, this self-documentation says :string. That means that this should be a string. That what's entered here, that should be a string, a piece of text. This does not say it should be, but it just gives you a tip to tell you it could be. It maybe should be, you know? So it doesn't force it to be a string, but it does tell the user that, hey, this should be a string that gets entered here. So it can, you know, stop bugs from happening. And here, this just means it returns nothing. It returns none. Cool. Now here, we can also add some documentation. Yet again, personal preference. You don't have to add documentation. I like adding documentation because if I come back in the future, I know what this does because I left the documentation. I'm just going to say platform can be one of the following. And then I'm going to just copy all of this. You could also say something, for example, this function will set the platform to search for. For example, you can do that. That's perfectly fine. Now, if I hover over it, you'll notice we have set platform, and here it says we need a string for it, and it returns nothing. And in here it says this function will set the platform to search for. Platform can be one of the following: OS X, Linux, Windows, Android, iOS, whatnot. That, what we see here, is what we did here, as you can see here. Self-documentation, completely optional, but I love doing it because it's always helpful. So I'm not going to do it with everything. This is just so you can see that you can do self-documentation, and you should if you possibly can. Now I can say try because we want to throw an error if something goes wrong. I'm going to pass here. Then I'm going to say, whoa, except. And here I'm going to get an exception as E. Now I'm going to print that exception. Now this is an optional exception here. You don't necessarily have to do this, but I like doing it just so in case if an exception happens, because you should use your try and except as much as possible to make sure there cannot be any errors when using this. Now you can say if the platform dot lower dot strip. You'll notice why I say that, because when we say Python main.py, right? And it asks us for our platform. Then we have this part here. Now I can say Linux and then space. Linux with a space is not the same as Linux without a space. Just take that as note. So that's why we say strip, because that will make sure Linux does not have any spaces before or after it. So it will remove those spaces, because you can see here, this does not have any spaces. So we're stripping the spaces away. Lower will just make any uppercase letters lowercase, as simple as that. And platform, yet again, is just a platform we enter, such as Linux. So if this is in self.platforms, then, and the reason here is self, and here is not self, is because here we're trying to access this right here. But this platform here is what we're accessing from here, because the platform will be passed in to set platform. We don't want this platform necessarily, we want the one that's going to be passed in, which could be two different things. So just take that as note. This one is self because we're accessing this one. This one is not self because we're accessing this one. Alright. Self.platform then, because now we're trying to set this platform. We're changing the platform because we're setting it. We're changing. Just make sure you understand that. Then becomes platform, and now we're accessing yet again this platform. Self.platform refers to this one right here. One without self refers to this one. Don't get confused here. Very important. .lower .strip. There we go. So if this platform exists in here, so let's say Linux, if Linux exists in here, which it does, then make this platform right here equal to Linux. That's what we're saying. And that's all we have to do for setting the platform. Now, the next thing we have to do is before we can just get data, is we need to build the link. Because currently, we cannot build the link. We have a platform, but how does the link know that we want to change? How does the link know what to filter with? Because you'll notice when we search here, the link changes. So we need to modify that. So I'm going to create a function. Take note of the tabbing here. It's still in the same class. I'm going to call it build link. And this is going to take itself, nothing else. Now here we can just return, and of course you can also add more documentation, for example, string of str, and this will say this returns a string. It is completely optional, and you can do it if you want it. For right now, I'm not going to do it, because why not? There's not a lot here. Anyhow, now we're going to create an if string, and we're going to say self.link in all caps, because it's a constant. We don't want to change it, and that makes sure we know we don't want to change it. Then we want to check the platform. Now take note, if you don't know Python, then I highly recommend you do go watch my Python tutorial, because this might get a lot confusing. Now, 2 single quotes, meaning nothing, right? So there's nothing going to be here. If self.platform, I'm going to explain what I'm saying here right now in a second. Just give me a second to tap all of this out. Is equal to, take note, single quotes, not double quotes, because double quotes will break out of these double quotes. And we can say all else. And in here, we can just say another if string. This is optional. You don't have to make an if string within an if string. You can use a different way of formatting this. But anyways, I'm going to say, and you'll notice if we go here to platform, let's say Linux, then we get platform dash and then the platform. We try the same, but with Mac, platform dash OS X, as you can see there. So here we have to do the same. We have to add a slash, because take note, this does not end in a slash. And we can say platform dash, and now we need to enter the platform we want to put here. So self.platform. Okay, so this is the basic first building of the link. So what's happening? Now this if statement, it might look very complicated, but it's not really that complicated. For example, we can actually break it up into something a bit easier, but I do it like this, and you'll see in the future why, because otherwise it's going to become just a massive if statement. So basically, if, then we can just take this self.platform, like that. Whoa, yeah, I can actually just do that. Then we want to return this, or actually we can just comment this out, actually copy it, comment it out, go above and paste. Now what we can do here is we can say, if it's equal to all, we don't want to do anything. So what we can do is we can just do that. Then we want to return nothing, because we're not doing anything. Else, what we're going to do then is, if the self.platform is not equal to all, is we're going to copy this, just to make things easier again. Else return, and actually I'm just going to copy this entire if string, otherwise I'm going to get confused. So let's go like this, boom. And now we can just remove all of this. As you can see, there's a platform, so now we can just say /platform. And here we can just remove that, like that. So that's basically what we're saying. If the platform is equal to all, don't change a thing, just return what we have. If the platform is something else, like Linux, then add a /platform dash and then the platform we want to change to. That's what this if statement says, or this one-liner here says. Now let's test it out, because we don't currently know if any of this actually works. So first we're going to call the itch scraper, right? Now we can say scrape.setPlatform, and now as you can see we have our documentation here. I'm going to say space Linux space to test out our strips here, and I'm also going to say Linux with a capital N at X to test out our .lower here. Then I'm going to say scrape.buildLink. Now I'm just going to print what's inside of this scrape.build link so you can see what we get. Now if I were to say python main.py, we get this: https://itch.io/games/free/platform-linux. That is everything we just did. Everything we have done up until this point has been to create this link for us. As you can see, Linux is all lowercase. We successfully detected that it's Linux, even with these capital cases and spaces. If we were to remove any of these here, an error would be thrown. If we were to remove any of them. Well, not an error won't necessarily be thrown, but this will not necessarily access that. So if we were to remove this .lower, then it would not necessarily know that we want Linux, as you can see there. Because Linux now has a capital N and X in it where it should not have. That we did there. And with the build here, as you can see, it works. If we were to just say slash here, if we were just to comment this out, because by default platform is all. So if we were to just comment this out, by default platform would be all. Now we can do that free. We can also set the platform in here by saying platform is equal to, and we can say OS X. Now we'll get that platform-OS X. That's what happens here. We should probably as well, while we're at it, go here and say .strip .lower. Yet again, this does the same as it does here, but this time it's just up here, because I noticed here that there's a capital OS X. Doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a problem, but it's always better to just have it lowercase. So now if I were to also add a bunch of spaces there, as you can see, no spaces are added. Okay, so that's everything we've been doing up until this point. Now let's say we want to actually set the values from the user input. So we want to get user input and we want to set all of these values that we're going to get. That includes the tag and the platform. We want to set those things via the user input. We can create a function called set values by input. And now here we can just say self, and then we can say print an F string. We don't need an F string here, we can just say platforms. And this will print out the platforms that are available for the user to choose from, because otherwise we might have a difficult time trying to show the user what platforms they have. Because how should I remember that we have a Windows, a Linux, a Mac, a Android, and an iOS, and all option? So yeah, and this will also allow us to give them like a number to choose from instead of having to type in Linux or Mac or something like that, which could highly decrease the chances of getting an error. So we're going to create a for loop. This for loop is going to go for platform index in zip self.platform, and that should actually be in capital case, so platforms, and range, the length of self.platforms. I'm going to explain this in a second because some of you might be getting confused here. And you can print inside of an F string, and I'm going to make a tab here just to make things look better, and we can say index platform. Okay, what's going on? Why are we doing this? What's happening? First, we're printing out platforms just to show the user that these are the platforms they can choose from. Then we for through platform at index, and we're getting it with the zip. So platform here will be all of the items in self.platform. So this right here, that's what platform would be. Index will be everything inside of this range. And this range is just the length of platform, meaning 0, 1, 2, 3, however, you know. That's what that would be. Let's actually see what we get. So I'm going to go here, and instead of doing that, I'm just going to say scrape.set values by input, like that. If we run it, as you can see, we get platforms, 0, OS X, 1, Linux, Windows. This also means how you will change this order. For example, if we were to make all the first item instead of the last item, so here, then all will now be 0. So this is completely dynamic in the way it works. Alright, so I'm going to move that back. Cool, so that's what we did here. This \t, that's just a tab. Here we display the index, which would be from 0 to 6, and here we display the platform. Next up, we're going to set up a try and except, because here we may get errors. So we need to make sure we don't get any errors. So, try. And here we're going to try to go platform is equal to int input and platform. Alright. Now this is a new variable. Take note, this is a new variable, this platform right here. Don't confuse it with this platform here or this platform here. This platform is its own new variable. This platform can only be used in this for loop, but this platform can be used in this try. Now you can say platform is equal to self.platforms and then at the index of platform. Now except, and here we need to say value error. I'm going to explain all of this in a second. So print, please enter a number value. And then we can say self.set values by input. Okay, what's happening here? First, we check if the platform is a number that gets entered into this right here. So it should be 0, 1, 2, 2, 6. It should be a number. That's what this integer is doing. So if this integer fails, so let's say they enter A, and we try and convert the letter A into a number, it's going to throw a value error. And that value error will basically say, hey, we need a number, please. And then we call this function again, because we want this value error to basically say, okay, if something happens, just give them an option to retry. In fact, we can do this. Let's go here. Let's say 6. Without a problem, it works. Okay, let's say A. Now it says, please enter a number value. That means, okay, we have to enter a number, because if we try to enter text here, it's going to throw that. Say 3, it works. Pretty neat. But what if we were to enter 7? 7 does not exist here. So we get an index error because 7 does not exist. So we can actually catch that error as well by saying except index error. Now we can say print, and I'm going to make an if string here. Please select a number between 0 and the length of self.platforms -1. And then we're going to call self.set values by input. So if they enter 7, it's going to say, hey, please enter a number between 0 and the length of this, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, -1, 6. Because there's 7 items, but it starts counting at 0. So we'll make it 6. Alright. And then if that error occurs, it's just going to call it the function again, so they can try it again. So if we do this, now we try and enter 7, we don't get a problem because it's not between 0 and 6. We enter A, we don't get a problem. We enter 2, it works perfectly fine. Alright. Now, last but not least, we need to get the platform. So I'm going to say else. So if none of these happens, or none of these errors occurred, then we want to say self.set platform. And we did set platform right here, set platform. And we're going to call that and make it platform. Because we're getting the platform here. And we stored platform right there. We stored it. And now we're going to pass it in. Now you say self.tag is equal to input, just normal input because we want text, and we can say let them enter a tag. Currently, we're only going to give them support for one tag. If you want to add more support for multiple tags, I recommend you, on your own as homework, go and add that functionality. Now, if we were to run this, let's see if it works. Okay, we say 2, we say horror, and there we go. So this works right here. Now we need to get the games. We need to go to the website and we need to get games. So let's create a function for that. So take note, with the rest still indented, define get games self. Now we can say site HTML because we're going to scrape the site. Is requests, like in a previous video, .get. So we're basically doing the same here. We can actually take this code that we commented out there and we can throw it here because that will actually decrease the amount of times typing we have to do. And let's just make sure our indentation is correct. Cool. I'm going to uncomment that. So site HTML is requests.get, and we imported requests right up here. So requests.get, and now this link right here, we can now, because what we did, we can just say self.build link, because we already created a function to build that link for us. But now that I think about it, we haven't implemented anything for the tag. How do we know what tag is going to be selected? Because we go here, and let's say we select horror. Then we get tag-horror. If we select atmospheric, tag-atmospheric. Okay, that means it would be as simple as going to here, right here, going there, and just saying, so right outside of that quotation mark, so right here, because that might be looking a little confusing, but basically here is where this starts and here is where it ends. This one right here, it ends here. As you can see, they both get highlighted when I select it. If I click here, these two gets highlighted. We want to be outside of these two right here because this is its own little if statement. We want to create a new if statement here again. Okay, now we can go like this, and yet again, nothing if they don't enter anything. If not self.tag. So if self.tag is basically nothing, then just don't enter anything. Else, we can say an if string, and yet again, single quotes, not double quotes, because double quotes would escape. We can say slash tag dash, and then self.tag. Boom. Now we enter that functionality. Whenever we want to add something else, we just copy this and then paste it and modify. It's as simple as that. That's the beauty of this build link. Now here, it will build that link for us based on the data we have here. Cool. Now we will build that link. After that, we want to get the soup from that link. So beautiful soup, and then site html.txt and get it as alexml. Let's make sure we actually get anything here by printing soup.beautify or prettify actually. There we go. Let's make sure we actually get some data. So I'm going to just keep this here, that right there, and then scrape dot get games. I'm gonna just do that. Now, if I were to run this, we can say OS6 is perfectly fine. And you can even make it as by default. If this is left empty, we can say 6. That can be homework as well. So by default, it will be all in. We say horror. And there we go. We get everything we need. You can even put some async await things in here. So while you wait, there's like a little loading displaying for the user to know, hey, there's actually something coming up. So as you can see, there we get all of the code from the website. Cool. Now that we have that, we can finally get places. Now, we need to take note. Games here. What do we have to look for? So let's see here. I'm thinking it should be somewhere around here because we don't need the image. So let's just move this downwards. And here, let's see, game title. Because this basically includes this A tag here, which you can just use the A tag if you want, but I think I want the div and in game title. It's optional, it's personal preference to be honest, but I think I'm going to do that. So I'm going to get this, and take note, it's this part right there I just said inspect. It's right here. So if I hover over it, you can see which one is selected. Cool. So it's game underscore title. If we then go here to this right here, we can now say games is equal to soup dot find all. So find every one of them that has a div with the class underscore, take note there should be underscore there, equal to game underscore title. So that will find all of the divs with this right there. It will find all of them. Then we want to get the game names. So game names is equal to an empty list. Now I'm going to just split these two because they're kind of different now. For game in game. So for every game inside of games, we want to do something. Game names dot append game dot find, because we want to find the first occurrence of what's happening here. And we want to find, if we go look here, there's the A tag. We want to find the first occurrence of this. And as you can see, there's title and game link. So we can now go here and we can say dot find the A tag with the class of game link. That should have an equal symbol, so like that. So that is what we're saying. Now we don't just want to get this, but we want to get the text inside of this. So text. There we go. So now we get the text inside of that A tag and not just the entire A tag. And now we're appending it. As you can see, we're appending it to this games.names. Let's quickly print out what we have. I'm going to go here and just print game names. So let's run this and see what we get, making sure we actually get what we expect. 0, let's say horror. And here we go. We get a list with a ton of items in it, as you can see here. Hey, Doug Literature Club, there you go. Now let's just bring this back here. So we get to the entire list of the names we want. Now first thing, we need to check if there are actually any games. So if the length of game names is less than 1, then we want to, and my bad, we should just move this right here to outside, because otherwise we're going to get the wrong length. Okay, so if the length of games.names is equal, or game names is less than 1, which meaning there's not at least one game that has been found, they want to print out, I'm going to create an F string here, saying no games found for, and we want to say what was not being found for in case the user might have forgotten. Self.platform, if not self.platform is equal to all. So basically we're saying no games found for Linux if the platform is not equal to all. So if they didn't, it just import everything. So if they didn't select all, then we're going to show the platform they want. Otherwise, we're not going to show the platform because they've asked for everything that platform has to offer. Otherwise, we can just say else all platforms. So they're either found for Linux or for all platforms, for Mac or for all platforms, depending on what we choose. You just go slowly through this. If you're struggling to understand it, just go slowly and maybe write out this if statement on your own and do something you might understand. With tag, and then we can just say self.tag. Please check tag. Because specifically they would want to check the tag. Maybe they spelled horror incorrectly and that caused an error. In fact, it would probably be better if they had also like a number to choose from what type of one they want, or if we could get all of the tags that are available and make sure that the tag they entered does actually exist. Although that's a bit out of scope for this video, I think that's something you could probably do on your own. Then you can say else, for in case nothing went wrong, if there were actually games, then we want to print, and we only want to print the top 10 games. And we need to specify we only want to print the top 10 games. So I'm going to go \n, \t. This is personal preference, just formatting, so we're creating a new line and then indenting 2 times with tab. Top 10 games for, and I'm just going to copy all of this because that means less typing for me. So platform, so it's going to basically have all of the same things, but just it's going to end with a \n. Cool. Now I want to for through all of the games we have. So for game in range 10, or actually, you know what would be better than ranging through 10 here? Creating a counter. Counter is equal to 0. And instead of ranging, we can just count it. So we can say for game in game names, like that. Then we can say counter plus equals 1. And then if the counter is more than 10, then break out of this for loop. Otherwise, we can just continue and say print game names, or just print game. That's all we need to do, print game. And let's just remove that. Let's see if it works. Basically, just to make sure you understand, if there were games in here, we can create a counter and we can print the games for that counter. This is also a lot safer because let's say there's only 5 games. Then we don't have to worry about like a range breaking the loop or something like that, like an index out of bounds. And then we have a counter, just counts, and if it's more than 10, then we just want to break out. Okay, let's make sure it works. So let's say 0 horror, and we get top 10 games. It would look better if we had like a big screen, as you can see here. Top games for OS X with horror tag, with tag horror. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 exactly games here. Let's actually make sure all of this works now that we have created this program, because currently we assume it works. So I'm going to close this. Now I'm going to get games for, let's say, platform Linux, because that's what I'm on. And for horror. There we go. So as you can see, it's platform Linux, tag horror. We're going to check this first 3 games here. So Baby in Yellow, Stargazing 64, and Wrong Floor. Now if we were to go here and run it, we were to say Linux, and we were to say horror, Baby in Yellow, Stargazing, and Wrong Floor, and then Slide in the Woods. Slide in the Woods. So yeah, it does work. Let's make sure it works if we do something like, let's say Windows, and we say lol gag or something, I don't know. Then let's see. No games were found for Windows with tag lolgag. Please check tag. So that's it. That's the program. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed and can now at least use Beautiful Soup to your advantage. With the knowledge I've given you, it's not everything you'll ever know about Beautiful Soup. There's a lot more you can learn about it. But it's the basics. And this is basically all you'll need for most of the applications you'll be building. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Please like and subscribe if you are willing to support me in my quest to teach everyone for free. And I'll see you all again in the next tutorial.